We live in times of wonder, yes, with stories all around, and marvelous new discoveries that continue to astound. That said, we must not forget those who before us came, for if you went back and spoke to them, I am sure you'd say the same. Now, if you want to know me, you'd best be aware that I'm most in my glee when I'm telling stories, and it's also true for those who lived here before me. My parents and their forebears all loved spinning fine yarns too, and my great grandfather, same name as me, and his tale I'll tell to you. It was in Red Island, Placentia Bay, about 150 years ago. My grandfather, Skipper Billy, was then about 10 or 12 or so. Now, I got it from my father when I was about as old as he was then. And since that day, I've passed it on so many times again. One evening after Rosary, great-grandfather got his Baccy and his pipe. You're going at the poker, aren't you? His dear old wife did gripe. Don't get me wrong, for I love you well, but this will never lead to good. Fitter for you to get rested up for tomorrow like you should. But Morris smiled in his charming way. Sure, it's just a bit of harmless fun. I only plays for Baccy, and I gets to smoke what I have won. She turned then to young Billy. Go with him, and mind he doesn't stay too late. So he got his coat and took off after him, already past the garden gate. Now, in his haste, he tripped and fell, and there, entangled in his toes, was his father's treasured rosary beads that must have fallen from his clothes. He stuffed them in his pocket, his mind more on his knees that felt so sore, and caught his father down by the stage as he opened up the door. Now together they stowed away the gear and washed down the Splittin table, and while Morris swept, Billy lugged in as much wood as he was able. They lit the lamp and started the fire in the old pot-bellied stove, and soon after other livyers arrived from here and there around the cove. They all sat round that Splittin table, and cards from the deck were drawn. Billy moved in as close as he could for to better see the goings on. But before they started, there was a creak and then a knock on the stage door frame, and from out on the wharf a deep voice intoned, "Mind if I join your little game?" He opened the door and he stepped inside, a most imposing sight. Tall and slim, dressed all in red, and his goateed face a ghostly white. Grabbed a stool and plunked it down right over the Trunkhole Hatch, and Billy sneezed at the acrid scent, although nobody'd struck a match. "And who are you, then?" Morris asked. "Did you come with the priest today? I thought I saw his boat arrive from Placentia, just across the bay." But the stranger smirked. "Oh, you are not wrong. Well, but you're not exactly right. And although he doesn't know it, you might say I tagged along for the night." Now, Billy could see from his father's face that he didn't understand. Still, he took the deck and without a word also dealt him out a hand. And soon everyone was settled in, although hardly a word was spoke. Perhaps it was the heat or the eerie edge to that stranger's Baccy smoke. Now that stranger, he had uncanny luck, never short of a king, queen, jack, or ace. And Billy knew something was amiss by the look that was on his father's face. Still, Morris's luck must have made it up, for he too won his share of hands, until at length the stranger spoke. "It's just the two of us now that stands." And as it was his turn, Morris took the deck and dealt the cards once more. But as he finished, a trembling hand dropped the last card on the floor. Now his son could see from his vantage point that this slip was no mistake, for in bending down to pick it up, a glance at the stranger's sleeve did take. Now Billy also bent down low and followed his father's eyes. But in that fleeting moment they both saw, to their surprise, that while the stranger's sleeve seemed empty, and of cheating there was no proof, instead of feet inside of boots, the stranger's legs ended in cloven hoofs. Go get the priest, Morris murmured, but the rest of them seemed frozen with the fear. Or get the holy water to drive that thing from out of here. Now Billy looked for something, anything that he could try. Then he snatched a rosary from his pocket, stood up, and he held it high. The stranger's features softened, and Billy thought he saw a grin. This is no place for one young like you, so I'll go, but I'll be back again. I should be feared, but you must know that there's worse around than me. And until you figure that for yourself, for now, I'll leave you be. And then he dived down through that trunk hole, and he grew, they swear, fivefold. Away he flew toward the hill behind a graveyard, I've been told. And right through it he'd ended blast, and a gap through it he drove. The pass they call the Devil's Bit between the harbour and Margery Cove. And to this day, the story's told about that poker game. Who was the stranger? Well, we have to guess, for he never spoke his name. Now Morris quit the poker out of fear that he'd be similarly beguiled. Oh, but he never tired of telling about that time he said the old devil came out to Red Isle.